You have been city manager in two major American cities. You obviously have had a lot of ground level experience of what democracy can be, and in some cases I know it can be pretty messy.
I'll start by saying the communities in which I have served as city manager, and there are three, I've spent half of my career as city manager and the other half in executive positions in local government, have had one unique commonality, and that is the fact that they were council manager governments. And that means the city manager has day-to-day operating responsibilities for every element of the business of government. The staff report to and are supervised by the manager, and my responsibilities have varied in terms of the scope from probably $300,000 to $800,000 to over $1 billion in annual operating expenses and capital investments. And so very large organizations with a specific mission to deliver basic city services. In the process of engaging elected officials in a representative democracy and citizens beyond the voting booth is the challenge that we faced in those communities. How do we integrate it in a way that you have professional management of the resources of government, you have good leadership and policy direction by the elected officials, but you have the public engaged in helping make the institution stronger, better, and more responsive to their unique needs. If you think about the local government budget as an example, most budgets are 80 to 85% labor cost. Your police, your fire, your EMS responders, emergency services are by far the lion's share of the budget. And then if you think about streets and traffic and parks and recreation, there's not a lot of real money to address the substantive issues like crime that is systemic to neighborhoods, like investment in neighborhoods, like health care. And so we are reliant on counties and states and the federal government. Even in Cincinnati and Dayton and Petersburg, Virginia, as people talk about their quality of life, it's not just about a traffic light. It really is about that broader picture that the separation of government makes it a challenge to engage and be responsive to. But if you don't find a way to do that, citizens aren't very happy with government. And when they're not happy with the president, they're also not happy with the mayor, because the mayor is the door they can knock on. The president is often too far away. So there is a concept that people have that what happens federally and at their state level influences their sense of democracy at the street level, where they live, where they work, and where they play. And so the job of local government not only is a service provider, but an integrating role.
What does meaningful dialogue really mean? In your experience, what kinds of things have you been involved in?
It doesn't mean where staff and I or the council have already decided and we hold a hearing to tell people what we're going to do. It doesn't mean we expect people to do the impossible, and that's run day-to-day operations. But it does mean that we listen to those things that are important to them, and we find out a way to address them collectively. For example, crime. The city of Cincinnati, when I arrived, had just experienced a major riot. Something that folks have not seen for 30, 40 years. Around police community issues at the top of the pin, but certainly beneath that, lots of issues about not feeling invested in and a part of the community, whether it was economics, whether it was around education, whether it was around jobs, job training. And for the city to say, okay, we'll fix police community relations and walk away, means we substantively haven't dealt with issues of concern. So we did something very unique and very radical. We said that we would change police practices, policies, and procedures in a way that police and citizens collectively work together to identify criminal elements, criminal activity, the causes of criminal activity, and then work on a collective solution. Now, it meant for all of us, we had to give up a little power and authority. It means asking people their opinion and their views rather than telling them what you're going to do. It also means giving citizens the capacity to be equal players at the table. They're not police officers, they don't speak the same language, they don't have the same history. So the Cincinnati community raised a pot of money, $500,000, $1 million later on, totally $5 million to help develop capacity on the part of citizens in the community so they could have a dialogue and a level playing field with police and city staff, so that they could be involved in the success of young children prior to them attending kindergarten, so that they could have some voice in job training and opportunities for young people that were not successful in the traditional high school environment. And that only happened because the collective community came together, whether it was raising money, whether it was giving up some responsibility, or whether it was volunteering your time to serve on a committee to talk about issues in your neighborhood. And that process has been underway for 3 years. And for me, as a city manager, the best test of its success is the issues that were in the four years before the latest election were no longer the issues. That people felt some sense of involvement and engagement, and they didn't re-elect those people that they felt were not serious about a dialogue, about engagement, and about leading us to a better future.
How do you manage all these stakeholders? A mayor, a city council, differing groups, faith-based communities, and how do you manage to coordinate and integrate all of those voices together without getting chewed up in the process?
I think part of it is starting with the courage of your convictions. And I never fully appreciated how much courage one has to have until you step into the position of trying to lead a community with differing views, opinions, and voices. But if you develop a relationship with your elected officials where you're clear about roles and responsibilities, and if you then develop the same relationship with the community, what can I do? What is the real capacity of local government, and how can we shore up the capacity of citizens? You'd be amazed how much people really do want to be involved and take some control over their fate and over their future. And if you design mechanisms that make it easy, if we have meetings during the day and people work, they're not going to be able to be involved. If the only place to get engaged is to come downtown and you live 25 miles away and don't have transportation, you won't get involved. So it really does mean taking City Hall to the streets. It means talking to people in terms that they understand, and it means being very clear that there are no easy answers to the substantive structural problems that we have in the country as a whole, but certainly in urban America. The issue of diversity and integrating the immigrants that come over, whether they're legal or not, they're still here, they're viable, they're engaged in the economy of the community, they're making contributions, and they need to be treated with dignity and respect. We need to find a way to engage them in the conversation. Those people that have felt and been disenfranchised, we need to find a way to make sure that they believe too in the American dream and that it can be real for them and their children. And those that have already been actively engaged, we have to work with them so that they don't speak for other people, but in fact allow other people to begin to speak for themselves. It's hard, and I have lots of arrows in my back. There's a saying that the cowboys get the arrows and the pioneers get the land, and so going out there trying something new, I definitely have the arrows to show for it. But the reward is that you really do make a major institutional difference, and it's not something that's short-term and driven only by your personality.